Hello people of the world and welcome back to my channel. Now first of all, I was about to film this video in my pajamas, but then one thing led to another and now I look like this. If you haven't noticed, I have a different location, permanently a different location for my videos now. This is my dorm room and there are 3 random snowflakes behind me, which actually fits because it's Christmas time and all that. There is a window here, so I've got plenty of natural light, but as you can still see, this side is well lit and this side not so much. But I still managed to put this lamp, a table lamp, which is very precariously kept on the very edge of my table to make sure that I get enough light on my face. So Netflix in my region has decided to grace us with The Legend of Korra, finally. And I watched the first season and I have thoughts, a lot of them. Now let me get a couple of disclaimers out of the way. Number one, I haven't watched Avatar The Last Airbender in a while. It has been 3 years since I watched it, so my memory might be a little bit rusty, but it's not that bad because the fandom is so strong and there are constantly this barrage of memes and information about The Last Airbender, and then I keep watching these video essays on it. So even though I haven't watched it in 3 years, I still know enough about it. That being said, at times I might not remember stuff from the previous show correctly, so I apologize for that. Number 2 is that I haven't read the graphic novels yet. So if there is something that has been answered in the graphic novels, which I say that I wish it was better explained in the show, and if it's answered in the graphic novel, then again I apologize for that. However, I do believe that some things should, if I'm just a regular viewer and not an avid fan, which I'm not, I do intend on getting into the graphic novels. I am a huge fan of The Last Airbender and the whole world. But for example, if I was just a casual watcher and not a fan, I would still like to have my questions answered within the series that I'm watching itself. So that being said, that out of the way, let us start with my thoughts on The Legend of Korra Season 1. So my thoughts are going to be a bit jumbled for this review because while I did note down points, I kind of did not really separate them into pros and cons. So my thoughts are going to be all over the place. So the first thing that struck me about The Legend of Korra is just how different in setting it is from The Last Airbender. And not just in setting, but in the whole tone and themes of the show as well. So Avatar The Last Airbender was more of a middle grade action adventure which leaned more into the adventure side of things. Legend of Korra is more of a young adulty, steampunk, action adventure which leans more into the action aspect of things. Now, this is just the difference. I'm not saying that one is better than the other based on the genre, but I did as a viewer, as an avid The Last Airbender fan, this is definitely something that I noticed, just how tonally different the two were, and which was meant to be, right? They did not intend on recreating the world of the first Avatar, the setting of the first Avatar. They wanted to do their own thing, and for the most part, I think that was pretty interesting. It was really interesting to see how bending works in this new steampunky vibe, which I'm always here for. Also, it did feel a lot more young adult. Now, here's the thing, this is not a criticism, but I do feel that somebody who really enjoyed Avatar The Last Airbender may not enjoy The Legend of Korra because the themes and the way these two shows kind of deal with different themes is very, very different. Avatar The Last Airbender was more of, almost everybody could enjoy this show, but I would see why not everybody would enjoy The Legend of Korra because again, the type of stories that it told, the type of show that it is, the type of themes and the way it explores these themes is a very acquired taste. Of course, young adult readers and watchers of those kind of shows are gonna love it. So I really enjoyed it because I love reading young adult, but I can understand why not everybody might be appealed by what Korra has to offer. Also, if The Last Airbender was all about adventure and wonder, Korra is more about action and really fast-paced plot points, and Korra was another one of those like typical young adult protagonists, the kind that I'm not like averse to. I've written that character before. I've written characters like that before. But again, it is more like her character falls more on the young adult spectrum than like the middle grade spectrum. And she's like super headstrong. She uses her punches before she uses her brains. I actually find those kind of protagonists like pretty interesting. I have, as I said, I've written that kind of protagonist before in my first ever work in progress, which for the time being I've shelved. I would have liked to see more development from Korra in the first season. I think that she starts off as a brat, and that is not exactly a fault in the way the character is written, but rather in the way the story is written, because so many things are so convenient in this story. So even if, say for example, you do not like the headstrong protagonist, I think that if the arc is written properly and if the character goes through enough turmoil and like grows enough, I think even then you would have liked that kind of protagonist. But the way Korra is written, she just gets things too easily and everything is just too convenient in the story, because of which perhaps you might not warm up to her. I did not warm up to her, even though I like this kind of protagonist. I do feel that things just came too easy. I liked how even like the soundtrack were different, like some like really fast-paced scenes in which the action is not like super intense, but like it's more like a kind of action. I don't know what that was, but it had this really nice, amazing jazzy music, background music, which was fun. It went with the tone, with the setting of the whole show, and in general the soundtrack was pretty immersive. I really liked it. One of the newer elements of this show is the pro bending tournament. So pro bending is basically it's a sport which involves bending, and I loved it. So I really love magic based sports, so whether it was Quidditch in Harry Potter or it's now pro bending in The Legend of Korra, I really enjoyed it. I loved how like Korra doesn't know all the rules of pro bending, so she's sort of like a newbie there. She does know more than the audience, like us, but when we are going into the tournament, we don't feel alone. I as a viewer did not feel alone, because it's not like Korra knew everything, right? So she acted as a great sort of stand-in for the audience, but not quite, because she did know a little bit more than us. The good thing was that through Korra's sort of slight ignorance and the commentary at the back of the pro bending matches, we got like this first-hand experience of how pro bending worked without giving us like an info dump, like this is how it works and that is how you lose a point, or that is a foul, these are the rules. No, you were in the arena battling it out with the team and having a good time, and still understood the game perfectly, because that was some good writing there. So I really enjoyed it. The pro bending matches were one of my favorite things about The Legend of Korra, like season 1, and I did feel sad that it kind of went nowhere in the first season. It just came and then it just gone. I do wish that pro bending kind of continues, because it was such an important part of season 1. Like the first half of the season was almost entirely dedicated to Korra learning to be like a pro bender. So I would like to see more of that in the upcoming seasons, or her just learning more from pro bending. I mean, I really liked how like in the first couple of episodes she learned, she kind of applied her airbending skills to pro bending, and she also used pro bending in like fighting. So that was pretty interesting, and I hope to see that. My window squeaks. It's either like a problematic window or there's a ghost here. Please don't eat me. Anyway, so yeah, I would basically love to see more of pro bending in the future seasons. Talking about airbending, this first book was called Air. We get a total of 1 airbending lesson in the whole season. That is when she's going through those swinging door-like thingy, and she applies that in her pro bending arena, and that annoyed me, because the name of the book is called Air, and there should have been more air training. So the thing about Korra is that she hardly spent any time airbending or learning how to airbend, and the next thing we know, after Aman takes away like her other bendings, boom, convenience, and she has unlocked her airbending. She is now an airbender without any training, any discipline. She is an airbender, when in the beginning of the season she did not know how to airbend at all. She could not airbend even a little bit, and there was no build up to it. She only airbends once or twice after that, and that's not even like good. She just dodges those doors. Are you telling me that from there she became like a pretty cool airbender with nothing in between? It's unbelievable. I mean, of course, if you're the writer and if you want to do that, then sure, do it. But like, I have one question. How? You need to take the readers, in this case the watchers, the viewers, through it. I mean, I'm not telling you to give me every single blow-by-blow details of her training. What I'm asking you is like one instance of her actually trying to master the discipline, actually overcoming that block in her head, why she could not airbend. So she lacked the discipline, she lacked the focus. So I would like to see at least like one more. I mean, from all the way from the beginning of the season, in the middle there was literally no airbending, and then the end of the season she's like boom. This is exactly the scene. She goes like boom, and like the gust of air just comes out from her fist, and I'm just like, how? Okay, I got really passionate back there. Talking about things that come out of nowhere, her avatar state comes out of nowhere. So after she loses her powers, she just connects with Aang, and because apparently she's at her lowest at that point, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it does make sense, but it didn't feel earned. It felt like a cop-out, and 1 minute she did not have her powers and she was at her lowest point, which is so interesting to explore, right? It is so interesting to explore an avatar who does not have control over all her elements, and the only element she has control over is the one she's weakest at. It would be such a great sort of starting point for season 2, but nope, they gotta give her powers back after 10 seconds. And it was just done in such an unsatisfying way. It literally went like, you don't have your powers? Okay, you are at your lowest point, so here are your powers, without you doing anything to earn them back. I did not like her avatar state coming out of nowhere. I'm basically not a fan of things coming out of nowhere. I like to see a good old build-up. Is that too much to ask for? So one thing that I really liked about the season as it started was just how scared Korra was of Aman. So Korra was essentially a very like sheltered child, right? She had a very sheltered childhood, and she never really had to face any big obstacles in her entire life, unlike Aang, who like had to start fighting in this 100-year war the moment he was like, when he was only like 12 years old. So for Korra, this was like a whole new experience, because she's what, 15, 16, 17? Yeah, so she's been like super sheltered. So when Aman, who is admittedly a super creepy villain, comes and like threatens her bending, so she is scared. And I was so interested to see how this theme would play out. When I watched this show, I really thought that fear would be like this consistent theme throughout the show, and it would just be so interesting to explore. I mean, the avatar was afraid. Who knows, maybe like the villain had something with like fear. Maybe the villain's motivation was fear out of something. I was very interested to see that, but it did not happen. So I was like pretty disappointed. I did, however, like how they sort of played with fear in the couple of episodes that they did. It added a layer to her character, which I really think humanized her. And you know how I said that I did not warm up to her character before? When she cried about being scared, I warmed up to her. That was a good episode. It was good to see like a child just sort of admit, or like some super powerful being like the avatar just like admit to something, to a kind of something that's holding them back, something that is essentially a flaw, because if she had not overcome it, she would not be able to face Aman at all. I would have liked to see that played out more. I would have liked to see Aman, like Korra, be really scared of Aman, because he was scary, okay, with that mask and like with that whole like aura. the guy was scary. I wouldn't blame Korra for being scared. I would have liked to see her slowly get over that fear, which kind of happened too fast. Again, like this show had a breakneck speed. At least it would have benefited from a couple more episodes, perhaps. Maybe just even one, but it would have been nice to see like a good build-up of some things that happened. Okay, since I'm apparently full rant mode right now, what was with the blood bending taking away people's powers? So here's the thing, unless I'm mistaken, Aang took away Lord Ozai's, Fire Lord Ozai's powers through energy bending and not blood bending. So here's the thing, everything in the Avatar The Last Airbender universe so far makes a lot of sense. Metal bending, new concept, makes perfect sense. Blood bending, new concept, makes perfect sense. Vine bending, new concept, makes perfect sense. Blood bending taking away somebody's bending almost permanently, it makes no sense. Like, how would you do that? So the bending wise, the system has been pretty hard. Like the magic system bending wise has been pretty hard. Yes, the spiritual side of it has been like pretty soft. Like energy bending kind of came out of nowhere in Avatar The Last Airbender, but I was willing to give it a pass because it was better to introduce a new kind of bending rather than have one of the old bendings do it, because it wouldn't make sense. There's probably a reason why they introduced a whole new concept in the last couple of episodes in Avatar The Last Airbender. Not just have him say that, oh, just learn how to blood bend from Katara and you're good to go, you can blood bend Fire Lord Ozai. No, they introduced a whole new form of bending because they probably knew that it's not working with any of the previous bendings. So why did they include this in the Legend of Korra? And while the bloodbending aspect made Amon a formidable enemy, I just do not buy into bloodbending taking away somebody's powers. It doesn't logically make sense. It's not consistent with the internal logic of the show. I may be wrong, okay? Maybe there are answers in the graphic novels. Maybe I'm forgetting something from the previous Avatar. But it just felt so frustrating because it didn't make sense in like the larger scheme of things. I could not comprehend. I really did not like this addition because it kind of destroys or kind of undermines the integrity of the magic system, which otherwise is like pretty solid. So I just did not like it. With all of those rants out of the way, this is going to be a long ass video, but like let's talk about some characters. So I've already spoken about Korra. I think Bolin deserved better. Bolin was basically in the middle of a very weird love triangle. It was Bolin, Mako, and Korra, and I was just like, the guy was done dirty because you knew that he was not even in the competition, and it sucked because he is genuinely such a sweet guy, and he deserved better. Korra, why did you go after pretty boy Mako when there was a perfect, adorable, funny little Bolin out there? I would have gone for Bolin. I mean, I think he was like super funny, and he had more layers than Mako did, just saying. And he was definitely a better written character. Speaking about love triangles, I wasn't a fan because they weren't interesting love triangles. They were really, really boring love triangles. The first one being with Mako and Bolin and Korra, which you knew what the end result would be, so it wasn't even interesting to watch. And then there was Asami and Korra and Mako, which was equally bland, because the reason is because Mako was really bland. I really liked Asami as a character. She was like super badass. She had more layers than Mako can ever hope to achieve. And I like simping over guys who look good, and Mako definitely has the face, but he does not have the personality, and therefore I did not like him. So whenever he was part of like any relationship dynamic, I would not like it. Poor Mako, but I know I'm being harsh on him, but you weren't great, buddy. And then there was this weird love triangle between Lin, Tenzin, and Pema, which sucked because Pema and Tenzin are married. And why would Lin, being a fully grown woman, still harbor a grudge over a love triangle years and years ago? I mean, why did they choose now to finally respect each other and finally move on from that grudge? Why didn't they do it years ago? Because they were working alongside each other. She was the chief of police and he was a council member. They had plenty of opportunities to respect each other and have that grudging respect for each other and like sort of let go of old drama, but they hung on to it and were only like, okay, now we're gonna solve it because it's time for Legend of Korra season 1. So I just found it weird and immature, and like a lot of adults were not acting like adults, which I understand, it's a kids show, but it was just a weird triangle considering Tenzin and Pema were married, and perhaps they weren't trying to hint at any kind of love triangle, which is I hope that's what the intention was. Even though I know that a lot of people do ship Lin and Tenzin, which I'm not a fan of. I really like their friendship and the respect that they have for each other. I think towards the end they became like really good friends, and I loved to see it. Speaking of Tenzin, he is the badass that we do not deserve. He is super adorable and funny, and I love how he can be a goofball, but he's also like super this kind of person. And he's also like a badass. That guy airbends, and that guy can take on enemies, and it's super awesome. I find his children to be super badasses too. I loved how they protected Lin. And then there was Lin. I loved Lin as a character. I liked her even better when she left the police force. I just don't understand how tough, being the authority flouting individual that she was, I just don't see her as a cop though. So I don't understand why Lin would be a cop, but I loved how strong her character was and how like sorted she was. I loved her character. She was like one of my favorite characters on the show. And I love the fact that she left the police force, but I have a feeling that she's gonna be back because I know some like spoilers from the later seasons. So all the character callbacks were great. You know, we had Aang, we had like Commander Boomy, we had Commander Iroh. All those things were like super nice and like little Easter eggs. And I love how Commander Iroh's voice was the same voice as Zuko. I fell in love all over again. Now everything out of the way, let me talk about my favorite part about the show, which was Aman and his backstory. Now Aman's brother, I forgot his name, but that council member who was the waterbender, I think that his story was beautiful, and I think that the final scene of Aman on the ocean was heartbreaking. I cried a little bit, just like a little bit. I think that was like beautiful. It was beautifully executed. It was beautifully done. I just wish that the councilman had more layers to him. So he was like bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy. Boom! I'm in prison. Now I'm a good guy. That did not make sense. As I said, there were some things that could have done so much better with a little bit more setup. This was one of them because this was so crucial to the plot. I loved Aman as a villain. I just wish that the council members' personality was better built up for that turning point to really hit home. But the ocean scene was super cathartic, and I loved it because they were both on water. I don't know, it was tragic and it was perfect. So I think that is all I have to say about The Legend of Korra season 1. This is probably going to be like a half-an-hour video. It's going to be super long, but yeah. If you like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, write down a comment down below. Let me know what you think about The Legend of Korra season 1. And I'm going to be recording the next video for season 2. So yeah, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, follow me on my blog, Myths and Misadventures. Thank you for watching this video, and bye.